Hey guys, how's it going? Kermode here. Welcome to another tutorial. In this video, I want to show you guys different ways you can process vocals to make them more interesting. Now, these are specifically vocal effects. This has nothing to do with mixing vocals or making them more polished or, sort of a radio ready vocal. I'm talking actual vocal effects, things you can do to make cool, unique vocals, things that wouldn't naturally be sung. And before we get into this video, I do want to mention this video is actually sponsored by Audeze. Audeze are the creators of these beautiful, amazing headphones here. I've been using them for a little while now, and they are my go-to monitoring system. And I can safely say they are probably the best monitors or headphones I've ever used in my entire life. So if you guys want to learn more about Audeze and their incredible line of headphones, head down to the description of this video so you can check it out. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So the first technique I want to tell you guys about is pitch and formant shifting using the Complex Pro warp mode. So a lot of people pitch shift vocals, very common technique, but my personal favorite way to do it inside of Ableton using stock tools and techniques is with complex mode. And the reason for that is the ability to preserve formants or alter the formants of a sound. So what do I mean by that? So we have our original vocal here.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
And I'm gonna set it to Complex Pro, and let's drop this a full octave.
Bad bitches into my way.
Now when you use something like complex mode, it's gonna sound something like this.
Bad bitches into my way.
But if you use Complex Pro and you play with this formant shift, you can preserve the original formant, so you get this really weird hybrid of a sound that's pitched down but has a different formant to it. So if the formant was set to 0, it'd be a lot more similar to complex mode.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
But when I start to change this, check this out.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
So you can pitch something down, and you can kind of keep the clarity of the sound by preserving this formant of the higher pitch.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
This goes the other way as well if you pitch up.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
Bad bitches into my way.
See, if you have no formant, it sounds very chipmunky.
Bad bitches into my way.
But with it,
Bad bitches into my way.
it's kind of this weird hybrid version. And so what I really like to do is actually start to even just layer different formant versions of this.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
So we could have that version with the original pitch,
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
and then we could do a different version that could even be down 5 semitones, for example.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
And you can hear every time I shift the formant, you get this really cool slight characteristic difference, which is kind of cool.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
Sounds pretty good. So that's the first technique. So the next technique is using distortion. But what I find people don't do enough is really play around with different distortion types. So what I see a lot of people do is, they'll slap on something like an overdrive and they'll get just a crunchy vocal like this.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
Which isn't bad, it's cool, it kind of sounds like a distorted radio sound. But where you can start to get really interesting is when you get into more unique distortion types. So for example, with Wave Shaper in Ableton Saturator, check out what happens when we play with this curve.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre. Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
But you can really hear you start to get a much more unique sound. And then if you step outside Ableton and use something like Trash, for example, well, some of the more unique distortion types within here can also yield some pretty cool results.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
It's going to sound completely different.
Bad bitches. Bad bitches. Bad bitches into. Bad bitches into my. Bad bitches into my way.
Than when I do something like this with the sandpaper setting.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
Like that, it's kind of sounds like it's breaking up, it's distorted and just weird. So I recommend don't just go for your standard stock distortion. Try some different distortions and really play around with the settings. And then if you combine that with our first technique, You get some really unique results, which is pretty cool. Next up is the frequency shifter. So the frequency shifter changes the harmonic structure of a sound in a non-exponential way. And what I mean by that is, if you think of when you transpose a sound, what's going to happen is the frequencies are going to go up exponentially. Let's say hypothetically your sound was an A and that was 100 hertz. It's not, but let's say hypothetically. If you were to go up an octave, that'd be 200 hertz. If you'd go up an octave, that'd be 400 hertz. If you'd go up an octave, that'd be 800 hertz. And so if you transpose something, the higher up you go, it has to go further hertz values to transpose it. Well, frequency shifter doesn't do that. So it's really bad on things where you need to kind of maintain the harmonic structure and keep it nice and harmonic. But when you're trying to use it as more of an effect, it can be really cool. And you'll hear this is a pretty common sort of sci-fi sound effect in video games and movies. So this is our original vocal.
Bad bitches into my way.
And watch what happens when we start to pitch shift this around.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
So this kind of sounds like, I believe, maybe like the Viceroy in Star Wars, or a lot of, pretty common sci-fi voices have this sort of
bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
Weird frequency shifted quality. And if you combine this with pitching, so for example, let's pitch this up.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm
bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
And we frequency shift it down.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
You get really weird harmonic shifts with the sound, and you create these kind of new, unique, alien sci-fi vocals that I find are really cool and really unique. So I recommend, instead of always transposing the sound, try using frequency shifter. So another cool thing you can do, and this time with delays, is when you start using a delay in a non-rhythmic value, you set it to time, and you have high feedback, you can get this sort of comb filtery type effect where you create these pitches essentially in the sound, because the feedback is so tight and it creates these frequency resonances within the sound. So to do this, what you need to do is have a delay. I usually like to have maybe a little bit of the dry signal, but mostly wet, high feedback, and short delay times. And check this out.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
Hear that sounds kind of like it's in a tube or something?
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
That's very, mechanic, robot sound.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
This is a very common technique, especially on like rhythm basses, but for sci-fi vocals where
bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
You can have these crazy mechanic sort of sci-fi sounds on things, and when you start to combine it too with, say, a filter,
bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
And
bad bitches into my
different feedback values.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
And if you even automate it, you can get really cool like pitching effects.
I'm feeling like your padre. Bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your padre.
So this is a really cool one where it's really easy and you can yield really cool results, and especially when you start to use other types of delays too, or you get kind of crazy with maybe modulation to the time value.
Bad bitches into my way. I'm feeling like your bad bitches into
you get just weird results. So I highly recommend playing with delays, but specifically with a tight tonal type delay. And lastly, a cool little bonus for you guys is Vocoder. I think Vocoder is still so underused for vocals, and all the settings within Vocoder can yield a really cool option. Like for example, noise. Immediately get this crazy noisy nasty sound. If you do pitch tracking, tries to track the pitch of the sound, which is kind of cool. If you expand or shrink the bandwidth of all the bands, you get this sort of resonator type sound. And if you take an external input, the most classic way of doing this, you could, for example, take a bass one shot, let's just go with something simple like this. We'll turn it off. We'll take the input from this bass one shot, and let's reset the bandwidth here.
Bad bitches in my way. I'm feeling like a hydrate.
But you hear it just picked up the quality of this bass,
Bad bitches in my way. I'm feeling like a hydrate.
which could just instantly yield cool results. And if you just start switching out basses,
Bad bitches in my way. I'm feeling like a hydrate.
you get some really cool,
Bad bitches in my way. I'm feeling like a hydrate.
really cool results. So there we go, guys. That was 6 really quick and easy techniques you can do to start to yield really cool, really interesting vocals using vocal effects. So I hope you got a lot out of this video. Again, this video is sponsored by Audeze headphones, so make sure to go check them out in the description of this video. My name's Kermode, and I'll be back with another video soon. Peace.